headlines. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won calls on civil servants to cooperate with the government's drive to reform the pension plan and reduce its growing deficit. Deflation worries coming back for Korea, with consumer prices growing in the 1% range for 2 straight years now for the first time ever. And President Barack Obama reacts to Democrats' big loss in the U.S. midterm elections and says he heard the frustration of voters. Hello and welcome to the newscast, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Chery. The Korean government is ramping up its drive to reform the government employee pension system. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won put in his 2 cents earlier today, calling for cooperation and understanding from the public. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
In a national address on Thursday, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won called on the country's 1 million public servants to stop any group action against the Park Geun-hye administration's push to overhaul the public employee pension system.
I ask all the public servants to understand and cooperate, as the proposed reforms are inevitable and needed to reduce the financial burden on the people and to sustain the pension plan.
Government employee unions and groups staged rallies after the ruling Saenuri Party drafted a bill that would gradually delay the age at which retirees can start collecting their pensions and freeze the amount for those getting $4,000 or more each month. The pensioners would eventually end up paying more while receiving less. Referring to public criticism over inequalities between the government pension and other programs, as well as Korea's extended life expectancy, the Prime Minister directed focus on the snowballing deficit.
If the public employee pension is left unaddressed, the deficit will not only total $185 billion over the next 20 years, we will have to spend $1.2 trillion out of state coffers by 2080.
Chung then pledged to improve working conditions in public service and offer more chances for promotion. Also on Thursday, 29 vice ministerial level officials announced they will join in the reforms in a bid to provide momentum to the government drive. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
With less than a month to review the details of next year's government budget, lawmakers began the process on this Thursday. Attention lies on whether they will be able to pass the budget bill by its legal deadline. If so, it will be a first in more than a decade. Ji Myung-gil has our next report.
At the Parliamentary Budget Committee on Thursday, the $346 billion set aside for next year's budget was divvied up. The government plans to allocate roughly $105 billion for welfare, $53 billion for R&D and social overhead capital, $48 billion for education, $33 billion for defense, $14 billion for safety, $4.6 billion for foreign affairs and unification, and the rest for other social costs. Next year's budget is a 5.7% increase, or $18 billion higher than this year's. Korea's finance minister urged lawmakers for swift passage of the budget bill.
Next year's budget bill should be passed as soon as possible to help boost the economy and stabilize people's livelihoods.
Lawmakers from the ruling Saenuri Party called for expanding the budget to boost Korea's slow economic recovery, while the opposition warned against tax revenue shortfalls that date back to 2012. Opposition party lawmakers also called for cutbacks in unnecessary budgets and for restoring corporate taxes for conglomerates. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won promised fiscal health to help ease concerns.
The government will accelerate fiscal reforms by blocking the wasting of government expenditures and bolstering punishments for those who misuse government budgets.
The two rival parties are trying to reach an agreement on the budget bill before the month ends. According to a parliamentary law revision made last year, if lawmakers fail to reach an agreement on the budget bill, the draft proposal will be automatically submitted to the plenary session on December 1st. The two rival parties are expecting a bumpy road ahead as the governing party hopes to pass the budget bill by the legal deadline of December 2nd, while the opposition party says a thorough review of the bill should be the first priority. Kim Young-gyun, ARIRANG News.
As of the end of October, Korea's consumer price increase rate has remained in the 1% range for a full 2-year period, and that's a first ever. Now, this is generating fears that the country could be taking the same deflationary path as its neighbor country, Japan. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
There are growing fears about deflation fanned by expectations consumer price increases will remain trapped in the 1% range for the second consecutive year. Statistics Korea says prices rose a mere 1.2% on year in October and were down 0.3% from the previous month. The so-called core inflation rate, which excludes oil and food, edged up 1.8% on year, but that's the slowest increase since February. Prices of agricultural livestock and fisheries products dropped 1.9% on month. At this level, some analysts worry the situation in Korea will reflect what happened in Japan in the early 1990s when Japan found itself in a long-term economic slump.
Unlike Japan in the 1990s, Korea is recording positive growth, but there is certainly a risk of deflation if low consumer prices continue for several years. We expect consumer prices to pick up next year. However, the low price trend will likely continue as global growth measures are focused on the service sector and on consumer products rather than on manufacturing.
The consumer price increase in Korea was lower than Japan's in September by 2 percentage points, the widest margin ever recorded. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And speaking of consumption here in Korea, the country appears to have one of the lowest consumer sentiments in the world. A survey of 30,000 shoppers by market tracker Nielsen shows that Korea ranked 57th out of 60 countries in terms of how much the country's consumers were willing to spend from July to September. Italy, Croatia, and Serbia were the only countries that recorded lower consumer sentiment than Korea in the survey. India topped the list, followed by Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand. The Japanese yen is widely expected to weaken even further against the U.S. dollar next year. Analysts at J.P. Morgan say the dollar will rise to 120 yen from its current level of about 112 by the third quarter of next year, and the same was projected by Credit Suisse and Canada's National Bank Financial as well. The prediction follows the Bank of Japan's surprise announcement last week to expand its monthly asset purchases to boost its economy. The trade ministers of South Korea and China are leading another round of free trade negotiation talks. There are even reports now that an agreement will be announced during a summit meeting between South Korean President Park Geun-hye and Chinese leader Xi Jinping next week. Shin Se-min has the details.
Korea and China are meeting for a 14th round of FTA talks in Beijing this Thursday evening, where they're hoping to hammer out the final details of their bilateral trade pact. Unlike in previous negotiations where vice ministers attended, Korean Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik and his Chinese counterpart Gao Hu-cheng are leading these talks. They hope to come to terms on an agreement before President Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping meet next week during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Beijing. According to Seoul's Trade Ministry, the two sides will be discussing all 22 chapters of the Free Trade Pact, 16 of which have been or are close to being settled. Yet differences remain on the opening of China's manufacturing sector to Korean imports and imports of Chinese agricultural produce to Korea. Korean automakers and farmers will be paying close attention to details from the meetings, as both are concerned about their bottom lines being affected by an influx of goods made in China. On liberalizing the service sector, the two have been far apart as well, with Korea wanting stricter standards than China. Free trade negotiations between Seoul and Beijing began in May of 2012. During summit talks in July, President Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping agreed to conclude the FTA negotiations before the year ends. China is Korea's leading trade partner, with bilateral trade last year reaching nearly $230 billion. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Investors scrambled for another day to scoop up early orders of stocks for Samsung Group affiliate Samsung SDS this Thursday. The public offering is seen as a means of giving the Samsung owner family more control over the group. Kwon Soo-ah explains.
With roughly $14.3 billion deposited, the subscription competition rate for early investing in Samsung SDS, Samsung Group's IT services affiliate, turned out at 134-1 on the second and last day of its early order period. The IT services company's IPO is said to be the largest listing in the second half of this year and is ready to make its debut on Korea Stock Exchange next week. Korea Investment and Securities says a total of nearly 1.2 million shares are up for bidding. The low initial public offering price of around $175 lured tens of thousands of retail subscribers to pick up shares on Thursday. The public offering comes amid expectations that Samsung SDS will rise as a key player in the structural changes that began taking shape within Samsung Group after the chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Gun-hee, had a massive heart attack in May. The IT service business currently has very little power within the Samsung Group's management tree, but with East Children owning a big portion of the affiliate stocks, they are trying to increase its value. Heir apparent Lee Jae-yong holds a more than 11% stake in the company. His sisters Lee Bu-jin and Lee Se-hyun both have nearly 4%. So by going public, analysts say Samsung hopes to speed up the restructuring process. Kwon Soo-ah, ARIRANG News.
Delegates in Busan, Korea, attending the International Telecommunication Union meeting have passed a Korea-led resolution that aims to connect the world via the internet. The so-called Connect 2020 Agenda resolution aims to ensure that 55% of the world's households have access to the internet by 2020, while cutting the price of ICT, or information and communication technology services, by 40%. It also plans to foster access and use of ICT and bridge the digital divide. If implemented on schedule, 15% of households from underdeveloped countries will also have access to the net by the target year. And staying with the ITU meeting, the Science and Creativity Festival is being held on the sidelines to provide a playing field for students with aims to boost their creativity. Our Connie Kim highlights some of the innovative concepts and scientific inventions that are expected to permeate into our daily lives.
You can see it, try it, and feel it. It's ICT, Information and Communications Technology, combined with science technology, which has become a vital part of our daily lives. Smart classrooms seek to provide education to students all over the world. This can be seen in one of the smart classrooms that Korea is seeking to make available all over the world. Be it in disaster-affected regions or in rural communities, this container-reformed smart classroom can charge itself through solar panels on the roof. This smartboard, for example, asks students to draw lines on the board to make the same 4 shapes. Now, by sending the same screen to students via their tablet PC textbooks, everyone gets an opportunity to try it out. In addition to the smart technology, students during the Korea Science and Creativity Festival were also able to engage in experiments and activities that came together under the umbrella of science and IT.
Snowboarding combined with science was such an amazing experience. I would like to see more of these.
For the exhibitors, they say it's an opportunity to meet people and promote their newest technology.
A lot of students seem to be amazed when they see 3D printers. By showing people how objects get printed in 3D, it's an opportunity to promote them.
It's these science technologies that the Science Ministry believes are going to be the growth engines of Korea's economy. During the annual Science and Creativity Festival held on the sidelines of the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, hundreds of schools, institutions, and companies have laid out some 400 creative programs that may become a part of our everyday lives in the very near future. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News, Busan.
And staying with the theme of digital books or e-books are now no longer mere replicas of their printed versions, with large smartphones and tablets now pretty much ubiquitous throughout much of the world. E-book makers have the perfect platform to develop their products, and they're taking full advantage of this opportunity. Our Park Ji-won explains.
Beaver and Red Boots is a children's e-book that boasts diverse interactive features like animations, pop-up images, and other visual effects. The book's adorable characters and detailed interactive tools earned the e-book this year's Best Digital Publishing Award from the Culture Ministry.
We have focused on less flashy features and more on creating interactive features that help children develop their abilities to think and comprehend the story.
This is a children's e-book on the solar system. Thanks to the graphics and interactive features, children are taught complicated scientific concepts like what causes tides and how the moon's shadow creates solar eclipses. Then what about this driver's guidebook that features a direct link to a Google map so that readers can spot a recommended location and drive to the spot? Just as these digital books show, e-books are no longer reserved to being replicas of their printed versions. Executive Director of the International Digital Publishing Forum, Bill McCoy, says digital contents of today should be called digital natives.
I think that digital natives, the younger generation who's growing up with digital devices, they're going to expect the content on those devices to be native for the digital platform, not just a replica of paper anymore.
McCoy says education is an area in which e-books will grow rapidly over the next 5 years. In Korea, however, the digital book market is still in its infancy. It accounted for just about 2% of the total publishing market last year, far below the global average of some 13%, leaving much room for growth. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
President Barack Obama says he plans to take executive action to push immigration reform in the U.S. with or without the support of Congress. For more, Paul Lee is joining us from the News Center. Paul, this announcement comes just one day after the Democrats' big loss in the midterm elections. What reaction has there been in Washington?
Well, it definitely has not helped ease partisan divisions, especially at a time when Obama needs it the most. Republicans will now take charge of both the Senate and the House, pushing their legislative power to levels not seen since the Second World War. This as the president is set to host the entire congressional leadership at the White House this Friday. Our Connie Lee has more.
President Barack Obama had a clear message for the American people, that he's solely focused on working for them.
I'm committed to making sure that I measure ideas not by whether they are from Democrats or Republicans, but whether they work for the American people.
At the White House on Wednesday, it was President Obama's first public appearance since the Republicans scored some great results in the midterm elections. The president vowed to work with Congress, although he stressed his administration's agenda will remain the same. However, he did acknowledge the Democrats' losses, saying it showed Americans want to see an end to the gridlock in Washington.
So to everyone who voted, I want you to know that I hear you. To the 2/3 of voters who chose not to participate in the process yesterday, I hear you too.
The Republicans will officially take control of both chambers of Congress starting in January. And Senator Mitch McConnell, who is set to be the next Senate Majority Leader, also said he was committed to working with the Democrats.
First thing I need to do is to get the Senate back to normal. That means working more. This gridlock and dysfunction can be ended.
The Republicans' strong showing gives them the momentum going into the 2016 presidential elections. However, some believe the GOP still has its work cut out.
It's still yet to be demonstrated that Republicans can do well in a national presidential race when those people vote.
Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And shifting to the latest development on the Ebola crisis, Paul, a Spanish nursing assistant, the first person to contract the deadly virus outside of West Africa, has been discharged from hospital. How did she beat this disease then?
Well, after months of experimental treatments from antiviral drugs to antibody serums, Teresa Romero was finally declared Ebola-free and released on Wednesday by health officials in Spain. The 44-year-old became infected while caring for a priest in Madrid who later died of the disease. Her infection had raised heavy criticism of the Spanish government for being ill-prepared to cope with a potential outbreak. In a press conference, Romero said she was grateful and expressed hope for other Ebola patients.
I don't know what went wrong. I don't even know if something went wrong. The only thing that I do know is that I don't have any resentment. But if my sickness boosts the studies on this disease and will help to find a vaccine, or my blood is useful to cure other people, well, here I am.
Meanwhile, a group of Islamic nations and the Islamic Development Bank have pledged over $65 million to help fight Ebola in West Africa. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation signed the agreement in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday, which earmarks funds for anti-poverty and health support programs. Chery?
And South Korea, of course, is taking part of this global response to the virus. It's reportedly taken the next step in sending its own medical personnel to West Africa.
That's right. According to senior government officials in Seoul today, an advance team will be sent to Sierra Leone between November 6th and the 21st. The team, which includes health workers and officials from the Defense, Health, and Foreign Ministries, will be working hand-in-hand with the British team already deployed there.
All right, and let's turn to the latest Forbes rankings, Paul. Russian President Vladimir Putin has topped this year's list of the world's most powerful people. Give us the details.
Well, Putin edged out his American counterpart for the second year in a row to be named the most powerful person in the world, according to the magazine. The power list was released Wednesday, citing Russia's annexation of Crimea and the billion-dollar gas deal with China as just some of the reasons behind their top pick. Forbes editors made their selections of figures who rule the world based on factors such as scope of impact, financial resources, and use of power. U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese leader Xi Jinping rounded up the top three, while South Korea's President Park Geun-hye moved up 6 notches from last year, placing 46. That's 3 slots ahead of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Samsung Group Chairman Lee Gun-hee and his son Lee Jae-yong also made a presence at 35th place.
And finally, let's take a look at the U.S. economy, the pulse of it that we're getting. American crude oil prices have fallen to a 3-year low as of this Tuesday, with other international benchmarks following suit as well. And of course, the holiday shopping season is just around the corner. So will this be the catalyst to jumpstart potentially consumer demand in the U.S.?
Well, that's what many analysts are banking on right now. U.S. consumer spending on gasoline dropped to about $341 billion last month, representing more than a 10% decline since June. So the theory is that people will take those gas savings and fuel other areas of the economy, including retail sales. Global crude prices slipped by about 25% since hitting a yearly high in the second quarter, hurt by excess supply and weak demand from China and Europe. Analysts say it's a welcome market shift for low-income households, which spend a large proportion of their wages on gas.
In addition, median household income adjusted for inflation is currently about 8% below where it was in 2007. So there are a lot of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. So when you live paycheck to paycheck and you get a little bit of pump price relief, that gives you a little more spending power, and you're going to spend it. You're not going to necessarily save it.
The National Retail Federation says it projects that U.S. consumers will spend nearly $616 billion over the holidays, 4% on year. Chery?
All right, let's see how the U.S. holiday shopping is going to help Korean exporters as well. Thank you so much, Paul, for those updates, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the weather forecast. So that unwanted gas from China, fine dust, is back and readings are at 135 micrograms per cubic meter over in Cheonan, which is about 4 to 5 times the normal levels. And this unwanted gas will gradually clear out by later tonight. At the moment, we are under mostly clear skies due to a high pressure front from China, but there is a possibility that showers may fall along the eastern coast later tonight, and about 5 to 10 millimeters is in store. Other than that, snow may fall on the mountains of Gangwon province. Well, winds will continue to get stronger overnight, leading to a drop in morning lows tomorrow, so make sure to bundle up for your morning commute. On to Friday's readings. Seoul reaches 15, Daegu and Busan 18. On to other regions. Daejeon hits 14, Jeju 17, Mount Kumgang drops to -2 in the morning. Those are the updates we're following at this hour. I'll be back with more after 10.
Thank you so much, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.